So as long as I got you here, Devil's Mouth, I'm gonna walk you through this whole thing. You're with you? Okay, cool. So, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna call this Devil. This is not part of our 50-ton challenge, it's a tutorial. We're gonna get you on the mun and back, okay? Now, there's some useful tools you want. I'm gonna type it in here in chat. The very first image is what you really, really want. It's the Delta V map, and it's this thing right here. Now, this is gonna be a lot to look at first, but once you break it down and you understand it, it makes a lot of sense. So, when you start on Kerbal and you get into the orbit of Kerbal, it takes 3,400 Delta V, okay? Knowing your Delta V and knowing your TWR, which is your thrust to weight ratio, is important for making interplanetary ships. If you don't know that, you're not gonna get anywhere. You can guess and get lucky, but you're not gonna get anywhere, okay? So, 3,400 plus we need 860 to intercept the mun. This is the arm for the mun. So 860. Then we need 310 to orbit. And then 580 to land. These are averages. Your mileage may vary. This is a different Delta V chart than you printed today. I mean, this is another one you can use. I use this one all the time. Yeah, color. TWR stands for thrust to weight. If you are at a 1.0, you're going to hover. If you're anything below 1, you're going to decelerate and fall. Well, actually, you're going to fall. Anything above 1 and you accelerate. So if you want something that can land and come off the mun, you're going to need something that has 860 plus 310, which is 1170, plus 580, which is about 1750. And then you need about 800 to get home, so 2,500-ish, okay? Now, you don't have to have it all on the same vessel. You can have a larger vessel carry a smaller one out, have the small one have like maybe 1,000 or 1,200, 1,500 Delta V, have it pop down, land, pop back up, reconnect, and then come home. I'm gonna build 2 different variants and show you how to get this done. So, the way you do this is you build your last stage first and then your first stage last. And doing that allows you to use the tools that Kerbal Space Program gives you. There's a Delta V tool right here. We're gonna go Delta V tool, Kerbal vacuum, which is space. And we're gonna use this to build our last stage, okay? So what we want to do first is build a mun lander. So we're actually going to change this to the mun vacuum, and I'll show you how to do this. Watch. So we're gonna sort everything by mass, and this gives you all of your stuff by mass, lightest to heaviest. We're gonna do a manned mission with a pilot, no scientist, nothing like that. So I'm going to grab a lander can as our very first piece. Whatever piece you start off with, unless you change it later, is your root part. It's what the entire vessel is built on. It's what the entire vessel moves on in the VAB while you're moving it around, okay? So this is our first part. This is the part that's coming home. So you want to make sure that you have a parachute on it. So we're going to put a parachute on it. Right here. Boom. You want to make sure that it has a heat shield on it. So we're going to put a heat shield on it. And that one's too small. We're going to put this one on it here. I'm going to take away some of the ablator because I know about how much ablator you need to get in. The ablator adds and removes mass. You see how we're just under a ton? If we're double the ablator, we're over a ton. The little bits and pieces of mass. Color! Showing the ways of the armament to loin the lion, Just Damn, RT Wassa, Grizzly Adams, and FC Campbell, or F Campbell. Guys, enjoy your ad-free viewing, your sandy emotes, and your sword. Thank you, Color. I appreciate it, buddy. So we're gonna have this heat shield here to protect it when it comes in, okay? Now this is what protects the Kerbal when they enter the atmosphere. No, you're fine, Color, you're fine. Now, if we're gonna have this little pod jump down to the mun and jump back, we gotta make a change to it. We're gonna take this parachute off. We're gonna add a docking port on the top. A small docking port right here. See this? So we're gonna have this docking port, and we're gonna add the chutes on the side back here. So I'm gonna add a parachute here. Doesn't matter how we come down, actually. Let me put it sideways right here. That way it still comes down facing the bottom. I'm gonna push it in just a little. I do some light clipping when it comes to tanks and whatnot. Hi Kyle, welcome in, buddy. It's good to see you. So there's our first little bit, okay? Now, to get to the mun and back, we need, I'm gonna call this 700. So we're gonna need 700 down, 700 back, 1400. I'm gonna round up and say 1500. We need 1500 delta V, okay? So we are going to put a decoupler on this, because the decoupler is gonna be helpful later when we're coming home. And then I'm gonna put a fuel tank on here. We're gonna start off small. We're gonna start with the smallest fuel tank, and then work our way up. So if I added this, and I put a really tiny engine on it, that's 897 delta V. Because Devil's Mouth is asking how to get to the mun and back. That's why. So we're doing this for Devil's Mouth. This has nothing to do with our 50-ton challenge. So that's not enough fuel. We're going to need double that fuel. So we're going to use this bigger fuel tank. And now we're at 1505. But if you notice, our TWR is low for the mun, which means we don't have enough power. We're below 1. You want a much higher TWR on the mun. So we're actually going to go with a stronger engine. The most reliable engine in the game, early and late game, is the Terrier. When we add the Terrier, we get our TWR. Hold on. Something's wrong with the calculations. Bear with me 1 second. There we go. Okay, something happened with the TWR calculations. Either way, we're going to run with the Terrier. And if you notice, we have 1607 delta V at 13.93 TWR. That's a lot of TWR. That's 14 times, like, right, gravity. It's hellacious, but we want to keep it that way for reasons. We're gonna put feet on this, that way it can land. So I'm gonna grab little feet. We'll grab these guys here, or let's grab the ones that are smaller. I'm gonna do 3 for mass recommendations, or for mass calculations. I'm gonna clip this up just a little bit, and I'm gonna bring these legs up just a little bit. You want to make sure that the legs cradle the center of mass as much as possible. So if you check the center of mass on this craft, you can see the legs are right around it. This is like min-maxing, kind of perfecting. You don't have to do it like this, but this is what I do. So that means this lander is going to land on the mun. Perfect. I kind of want the legs to be away from the opening there for the ladder. So we're going to reposition these legs. I'm going to put them like this. That way the ladder's more open. And let's see. Let's tweak this just a little bit. That works here. Okay. So there's the lander that's going to go from the main ship down to the mun and then back up again, okay? So that's the first one. This is going to be attached. We're going to stage this. This is going to be a piece of staging that occurs. And then we're going to take this ship and we're going to turn it upside down. Because this is going to be loaded onto another ship. That's going to be our ship that takes us out to space. Since I'm not worrying about early career or anything, I'm just kind of building as if we were building something like final. So from there, we're gonna change this back to Kerbal vacuum. So now we're in Kerbal vacuum. It behaves a little differently than Mun vacuum, only for TWR purposes. We're going to pop this off, put on a new docking port there. And then what we need at this point is we need 860 plus 310, 1170. I'm going to round this up to 1500. So we're going to make this one also 1500 to get to the Mun. So we're going to attach. This one's going to look like this probably. Add a fuel tank. Now, one thing that we don't have, that we're probably going to have to take into consideration here, is we don't have a control wheel. I'm going to take this off here, and we're going to put a tiny SAS wheel, small inline reaction wheel, on here. Hold on. I want to put it to where... I want to put it on the decoupler, not on the heat shield. That way we have some SAS control over the ship while we're coming in. Stop clipping. Okay. Now we're going to turn it back upside down. So now we need our next stage. Our next stage is 1500 Delta V is the goal. So let me make sure our staging is back to being what it was. This staging is... Oh, they're both. Okay, so wait. Disable staging there. That staging is there. Okay, cool. 1500 Delta V. So I'm gonna probably put a reaction wheel in here too. It's a little larger. And we're at 1.8. This is a DLC. Do you have the DLC's Devil's Mouth? Or are you playing stock? Because if you're playing stock, I might have to change something. You're playing stock? Okay, so I can't use the 1.8 architecture. So we're going to have to change this a little bit. You can get them no problem? Okay, well, Making History is probably the best DLC for the game. They add the entire 1.875 architecture, which I think is it's literally a game changer. So I'm gonna use it in this, but you can use whatever you want. So Devil's Mouth. One thing I want to show you, and this is also a suggestion to everyone else. There's a website here that I'm not affiliated with whatsoever. It's called Is There Any Deal? And what they do is they crawl legitimate places for games. And if you search Kerbal Space Program, you can find them cheap other places besides Steam. So Making History, for example, is currently $15 on Steam, but it's $6 at the Indie Gala store. So if we take away all of the references about affiliates, you can buy a Steam code right now for $6. And this is the Indie Gala store. So if you want to pick it up, you can pick it up for $6. But I would bookmark this page if I were you. I'll post this in chat too. This is... There you go. That's a good resource to use to find Steam games. If you ever want to look it up. That's what I use to buy my games. Alright, so let me pop this one here. We're going for 1500 Delta V with this stage. I'm going to turn off cross-feeding. Cross-feeding is when it pulls fuel from another stage. That way we don't use the fuel, this fuel, in this stage. How you doing, Stochastic? Welcome in. I'm going to put on an engine and see where we're at Delta V-wise. We currently have... Hold on. 2,794 Delta V with this stage. Now, it's a 0.65 TWR, but in space, it doesn't matter. When you're transferring from one place to another, it doesn't matter at all. So we have almost 3,000 Delta V on this one stage. Perfect. Now, here's a problem that Making History fixes that I'm going to show you. We have a 1.875 fuel tank. We have a 1.25 engine. If we go to put a decoupler here, you see how it has a giant gap here? That's really bad for drag. what Making History brings in is it brings in something called engine plates. And these engine plates act as a decoupler. It also acts as a plate for an engine so that when you attach something else to it, it makes a nice flush transition. I strongly recommend engine plates because what you can also do with an engine plate is you can change the attached nodes, and I could put 4 engines here if I wanted to and still have a clean transition. It's a very, 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 very useful piece of technology that's included with the Making History DLC. So we're gonna put our engine there. We're gonna seal this up, and then we're gonna continue building. We're not gonna use that fuel tank. I was just using that as an example. So now that we've got our entire space stage, we want to build this the stage that's going to get us from mid-atmosphere into space, the second stage, if you will. So we are going to find this decoupler, which is right here. Make sure our staging is correct all the way through, and we can start adding other things. I'm going to add a fairing because we want to pack all this up in a fairing. That way it's nice and clean. Let's see. Protective shell 1875. Right there. We're going to pop it out just a little bit. And then we're going to do this. Now, I know a golden rule is don't put your Kerbals in a fairing. I don't care. My Kerbals are in a fairing. We're going to make sure it's auto strut. We're going to make sure it's clamshell. I want 3 pieces, not 2. And you can even change the color of your fairing with Making History. All right, so there's our payload. Let's build the second stage. Now, we're going to switch from Kerbal vacuum to Kerbal altitude, and we're going to put it, I would say 20K for you. I usually do 30, but put it at 20 kilometers. That way you can kind of get an idea. And if you notice, it changes the pressure, which allows you to see some of the true TWR of some of your engines that you have. So we're going to go with a nice adapter from 1.8 to 2.75, which is right here. And I'm going to put on a nice, healthy 2.5 meter tank here. And I want to use the Wolfhound. I think the Wolfhound is an exceptional atmosphere engine after a certain amount, and I believe it'll do the job. 2,330 delta V at 1.26 TWR. The minimum TWR that I would suggest for going through atmosphere launching is 1.2. As your craft gets lighter, you'll be able to get more TWR out of your stage. Now, this 2330 goes into your calculation here for your 3400. So now we only need about 1100 delta V in our first stage, and then we've got the 3400 to get us into orbit. We got the 1100 to get us to the Mun, and we got the 1500 to land and come back. So that's our second stage. Now we're gonna build the last stage. I'm gonna use the same 2.5 architecture. How far have you made a successful landing? Guessing you and some others did settle for the moon. How far have I made a successful landing? Me? I've made a successful landing everywhere, Devil's Mouth. Do you always need stages? Yes. For all intents and purposes, you always need stages, yes. And stages are what breaks up each rocket. Yeah, Devil's Mouth. I've been everywhere. I'll show you a picture. 1 second. This is a picture I haven't. So we did a hard mode playthrough. Kerbal Space Program has a hard mode, and the very distant planet is called Elu. And I'm going to show you a craft that I designed. This is a manned craft, 3 Kerbals on the surface of Elu. So there it is. They come out of there. They got science modules. They've got deployable science. Feet, legs, the whole shebang. And that's ELU. So yeah, I've been everywhere. Is that one of my greatest achievements? No. My greatest achievements was building a helicopter, an infinite electricity helicopter that I flew on Eve, which is the Venus equivalent. Okay, so let's build the very first stage, and then we'll go ahead and launch this. So we're gonna put a decoupler here. I'm gonna add a fuel tank of considerable size. This one's a pretty good fuel tank size. And I'm gonna add one more. And I wanna add I wanna add another control wheel. And then I wanna add an engine plate. And we're gonna kinda go fancy with the bottom plate here. You can do whatever you want, just make sure you have a respectable amount of TWR. I'm gonna put like 3 nodes on it, and we're gonna take an engine. Now, if you want to learn more about engines in the game, if you right-click on them, they tell you a lot about their ISP, which is your specific impulse, which is your efficiency in different volumes. So you have your at sea level ASL, and you have your vacuum. Some engines are much better in vacuum, but they're not good at sea level, etc., etc. These engines down here are known as the shuttle engines. These are the RS-25s that were on the shuttle. They call them KS-25 because they're Kerbal engines. And these are what most people use for like launching a rocket off. Because if you notice, the thrust is high, and your ISP is also very efficient. I don't think we need 3 though, but I'm gonna put 3 on here just for shiggles. Yeah, it puts us at 4.4 TWR. That's too much. So divide that by 3. Let's just do the 1 then. We're at 1533 at 1.66. And that's at, oh, I'm sorry, sea level. Oops, I didn't change that. Sea level. Why is it abbreviated ISP if the words are specific impulse? I don't know, Chivo. I've never actually tried to look that up. I don't know, to be honest with you. We can Google it real quick. Usually written, oh, it's subscript. See right there? Impulse and then a subscript SP. So there we go. That's why. Kerbal just doesn't put the subscript. There's a lot of weird things in space. But there we go. We learned it. Alright, so this should be enough to get us to the Mun and back. So let's go ahead and launch it. And there's something specific we have to do when we get out onto the pad because of the way we built this, and I'm going to show you what it is. So we're going to hit save. We're going to hit launch. Here's a very important thing that you have to always double check. When your nav ball pops up, make sure that it shows blue and that 90 is on the right-hand side. It's not going to be for us. It's going to be brown with 90 on the right-hand side because our control point is upside down. So what you want to do is you want to right-click on this. Let me actually get... Let me aim the camera real fast. Right-click on your stage, control point, reverse it. Now, it's not going to be 90 on the right-hand side. It's going to be 270. But you want to burn... You're going to be burning... You want to turn and go that way, which is going to be the 270 in this case. If you don't want that to be a thing in the future, put a probe core on your ship. That way you don't have to worry about that problem. But you always want to make sure that your blue is facing up and that you know which way you're going. turn on your SAS if you're new or just starting out. I would honestly very much tell you to open up maneuver mode and pay attention to your projected apoapses and your projected periapses, and open up your staging so that way you see your TWR and your delta V, because those are important. If your TWR is very high, right click on your engine and turn that shit down. If it's very low, you need to go back to the VAB and fix your stuff. We're at 1.56, that's respectable. I'm gonna turn the gimbal down just a little bit because this thing gimbals like a crazy man. And what I wanna do is I wanna double check staging one more time. We got some issues here. So I wanna make sure this engine, so this right here doesn't belong. So we're gonna take this and completely move it up to there. This is our next stage here with this rocket engine, which I think I have 2 decouplers. I made a mistake and have 2 decouplers on the same stage, which is a mistake. Or no, I don't. I just have the one. So we're good there. Then this one is for that rocket there, but we have the fairing here as a stage. So we're gonna put the fairing down here. So we have this stage, fairing, next stage, and then this is the decoupler. This is the docking port for the ship, and then that ship's rocket, and then this is the decoupler to go home on. What is considered high TWR? I would say anything over 2. Anything over 2 is high. But as you're burning and going through the atmosphere, you may encounter more than 2, but if it's only for a brief moment, it's okay. I would say like 3+ is really, really crazy. If you're in space, it really doesn't matter. On the atmosphere is really where it matters the most. Because there's a sweet spot to where you're wasting fuel and you're not being very fuel efficient. So I would say keep it under 2 if it's your first time and you're just trying to work things out. Some builds require you just to push it as hard as possible out there in order to get your initial first stage working as optimal as possible. So we've got our staging fixed. I'm gonna hit Z. Z and X are your friends for throttle, for full blast and not full blast. And shift and control is to fine tune it as you're moving through volumes. And then we hit space to go. And we're going. Now we don't have all of our control nodes because we only have a level 1 pilot. That's probably what you're gonna experience when you're playing for the first time. We're gonna be manually driving, pointing at nodes and everything else. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Now, what my rule of thumb is 2,000 or 200, whichever one you hit last, and then start turning. You want to be at 45 degrees. This is normally towards the 90. So you want to be at 45 degrees at 10,000. Oh, I didn't reset the camera. There we go. The camera defaults to your center of mass. So if you ever zoom in on your ship, you know where the center of your mass of your ship is. So we're going along the 90. This is the gravity turn. We're turning with the planet's spin. We're going with the gravity. This is the most efficient turn. If you try to go retrograde or north to south, you're going to use more delta V to get places. It's a bit trickier.